with Brad, Jim, and Will. What have they been watching lately? They're husky, hairy, huggable homos. Movie Bears Podcast.
Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears Podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week along with some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos, the original 4-H's of podcasting, we get together to review movies either current or classic on this show. Of course, all with a lovable gay bear twist. But this show is for everybody, and we hope everybody's tuning in because we have a big one for you this week. I'm not talking about the giant cattail on Jim's screen right now. If you're watching on video, I am, of course, talking about the fact that we are reviewing The Flash, the newest superhero outing from DC before their big giant reset that's coming. Thank you, ? James Gunn. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that. But a whole lot of conversation is going to be happening on this episode, and we'd love for you to be part of it. So if you're watching live, and I see a few of you are, welcome. Hello, glad to have you here. Feel free to drop your thoughts as we're chatting in that live chat. We may not get to read them all on air, but we'll certainly bring some of those out and address what you have to say. If you are listening through the magic of digital tape delay on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, etc., we'd still love to hear from you too. So leave those comments on our Twitter at MB Podcast or on our Facebook. Just look for Movie Bears Podcast. Find the video feed for this episode, of course, this being The Flash. Drop your thoughts. I have talked a fuck ton already, so I'm going to hand it over to a couple other guys. Jim Pugliafico is with us on the show this week, as usual, but that doesn't make it any less meaningful. Babe, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a kind of a busy work week. One of those like unexpectedly busy work weeks. Like you expected it to be like a normal week, and then all of a sudden a bunch of shit gets thrown at you, and you've gotta churn it out. But that's what kind of week it's been, and but I'm happy to be here in this nice place every week that we get to talk about movies with you guys. So I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Well, thank you for carving some time out of your unexpectedly busy week to be here with us. We appreciate it. It's always fun to hang out with you.
No carving necessary.
And the wonderful William Lindis is also here with butterflies flying out of his head on my screen. Will, I love that wall behind you so much. But obviously, you're the focal point that we love more. So welcome. How are you?
Hey, first of all, I love being here with y'all as well. Always a blast. I'm doing great. This is another week, if we're talking about work stuff, where I've got 3 webinars / like public speaking things, like, speaking gigs on deck today. Fortunately, none was today, so I didn't have to come in here all like hoarse and raw for recording tonight. So I'm really jazzed to do this. I'm kind of in a chatty mood and just want to get it out of my system as we're talking about a good, bad, in between. We'll find out soon movie.
But isn't it better to do it raw when you're recording?
Not the voice.
Oh,
I see what you you know what? I didn't get you at first. Let me just bear back up for a second. And,
okay. Nice.
Am I okay?
Yeah.
All right,
I
got
you. Yeah.
I see.
I think we're good. I think we're fine. This is going to be a good show. I can tell already. We've got some great energy. I also am very jazzed to be back here with you fellas. It's a big highlight of my week every week to spend time with y'all. So let's do it. We are back in the saddle. It is time to talk about The Flash. We will just let you folks know, in case you are new to the show, you're not familiar with our format. We talk about films spoiler-free for about 15 minutes. And then we'll give you plenty of warning before we open things up to spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film of the week this week, of course, it's The Flash. That is your time to step away if you're listening live. Maybe head on out for about 25, 30 minutes and then come back for plugs at the end of the show. Things we love and want to put on your radar. You're not going to want to miss those. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., use the time index in the show notes to skip forward as needed. All of that stuff said and out of the way, Jim, Will, are you ready to enter the motherfucking Speed Force?
Hey, gotta go fast.
Yep. Let's go to Speedland.
Right.
Go Spacer, go.
All right. Here we go. Our discussion of The Flash. All right. Jim, do us a favor. I know that comic book movies are not always your favorite thing, but I am excited to hear your thoughts tonight. Briefly set this one up for us. What the fuck is The Flash? But even more importantly than that, what were your initial spoiler-free, of course, thoughts? Is this one a see in theaters, see on streaming, or maybe a skip entirely? Where did you come down?
Okay, so yeah, this one is called The Flash. This is the latest entry in the DC extended universe. Is that right? E is for extended,
Yeah.
right? I guess. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'm going to read from IMDb, but I'm going to warn folks who are not into spoilers and prefer to go in as virginal as they can. Stay out of the IMDb page because I think there's spoilers in the cast list that probably you might get more out of the movie if you don't know a lot of that going in. Anyway, so here's the IMDb plot summary. Barry Allen uses his super speed to change the past, but his attempt to save his family creates a world without superheroes, forcing him to race for his life in order to save the future. So yeah, so here we have the Flash. I don't think we've seen the Flash. The Flash here is played by Ezra Miller. We've seen the Flash in other films, but but we haven't had a Flash movie yet.
Correct. Yeah, we've seen him a few times show up in like the Justice League movies and stuff along those lines, but this is his first like solo outing.
Indeed.
And I've lost sound all of a sudden.
Oh
Uh-oh.
no!
Yeah.
All right. Flash
What the frig
time
is going on?
out.
Help me.
You can't hear us at all, babe?
Hmm?
Can you
can't
hear us, Jim?
No, can't. It will not connect.
Oh,
Hold on,
no.
let's see if it reconnects.
All right, let's use the Speed Force and jumpstart his
All right,
audio.
I'm back. I'm back.
You're back.
Back.
Sorry.
You're back. Okay.
I don't know why these AirPods just like spontaneously disconnect. I don't get it. But anyway.
Okay. So let's
I'm gonna continue.
let's time back in a second.
Yes.
And we're gonna rewind. By the way, you're getting some thoughts and prayers in the chat from Josh. Hey Josh, thanks so much. All right.
Thanks, Josh.
So Jim, take us back to where you cut out here. Let's do it.
Sure. So like I said, I think this is the first film that has been centered on the Flash. And it's an interesting film. I did end up liking this film. I had a journey in this. You talk about a character arc. I had an arc in this movie. I went from within the first 15 minutes of this movie feeling like I might not make it to the end of the whole 2.5 hours of this film that I might have to actually walk out because there was some stuff near the beginning of the film that I thought to me was terrible. But this movie brought me through a journey. And by the end of the film, I'm like, hey, I'm kind of digging this film. I really liked where it went. I liked the way they told the story. I liked a lot of the characters and the acting. We talked a little bit about Ezra Miller as the Flash. we he's doing a lot here. He's got a lot of this film on his back. Obviously, he plays Barry Allen. I'll just say that so I don't spoil stuff. But he plays Barry Allen, and there's a lot of Barry Allen in this film. Um, and I don't want to go through too much of the cast list. I mean, I'll go through the stuff that we saw in the trailers, but obviously we saw Michael Keaton, we saw Ben Affleck in the trailer. Um, it's got Michael Shannon in here as General Zod again, which was great to see him. But I did like this film, and I look, it didn't rock my world like something like Guardians of the Galaxy did as far as these films goes. But as a comic book film, I thought this worked pretty well once I got past my initial negative reaction to stuff that was going on at the beginning. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that maybe more in spoilers what it was. But yeah, I would say this film is worth seeing. I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that your journey with the Flash was a fruitful one for you. That's excellent. Will, how about for you? Did it land the same way? What are your thoughts?
It did not land the same way for me. This isn't a movie that I actively disliked or hated or anything along those lines, but there were some things, as you mentioned, especially the stuff towards the beginning of the movie, that made it really, really hard for me to connect with this film. There are some definite CGI issues in this film, and I know that the directors come out and said that they are intentional. I'm going to take that at its word, but the finished product that I saw on screen really felt in certain sequences very video game cutscene-y, with rubbery textures and limbs that feel a little ragdoll-y and facial features that feel superimposed over a skeleton as opposed to the way a face would actually look. Some of that might be budget, some of that might be reshoot, some of that might be, there's a billion different things that could be. My job isn't to figure out what those reasons are, just to say that it was glaring and it was an issue. The actual storyline itself, I think that there is a core emotional through line to this film that works. There is a character wants a thing, a character has to learn about some things, has to make some mistakes, classic hero's journey items, right? And some of the supporting characters that are found along the way are pretty interesting. My ultimate problems are twofold. One, I did not like how the story resolved, and we'll talk about the reasons why, but there's some stuff at the end that feels very abrupt, like the movie just ran out of time and just had to sort of wrap some stuff up. And I never really like that when a movie starts weak, ends weak, and kind of the middle is the only part that I have anything to really glom onto. And the other problem I have is with some of the choices that Ezra Miller makes as the lead in this. They are an actor who I think that I've historically been excited about seeing play the Flash. I thought they were probably the best part, or one of the best parts of the Justice League movie. But I also think that a little bit of Ezra Miller Flash goes a long way. A bit of Ezra Miller Flash becomes grating, and this film finds a way to make them especially grating for me. So it's a challenge to really enjoy what the character is going through when they're going through these emotional beats, because I just couldn't connect with it. There's of course a lot of the Ezra Miller stuff from the real world, which is complicated and nuanced and gross and uncomfortable. I don't know how to unpack that or address that here, especially since the movie itself and the creators don't really seem super interested in unpacking it or discussing it either. So what I'm just going to say is that I acknowledge all of those things. I'm aware of those different things, but even judging the performance as it was absent of those things, I'm not necessarily enthused with overall what I saw. Should you see it? Should you not see it? I don't know. Sometimes like there's films that you absolutely like, warn people against, and sometimes there's films that you actually absolutely want people to go see. This fills in that nowhere's land right in between. I will say, if you're the type of person that likes to see big budget films on the big screen because you like the spectacle of it, this is probably one that you could get away with waiting on later, because again, I was very between underwhelmed and whelmed with some of the special effects, unfortunately. So yeah, that's where I fall on this one. I wish I liked it better, but I didn't hate it.
So is this a soft pass or a soft recommend or a
It toes the line. If you want to see the Flash movie, go see it. If you want to wait for streaming or something like that, this is not a one that you have to see in theaters.
Right. Well, Will, thank you so much for giving us your thinking on this one. I will preface my thoughts by saying I saw it twice. And I think that helped a little bit. I adjusted my initial rating by half a star after seeing it the second time. And I think part of that is the CGI is fucking terrible in this movie. But I did read the director's comments after I saw the movie and made that initial impression. I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt for some of the like specific sequences he's talking about where that was intentional. But like there are sequences that happen in the beginning of the film that are not part of what he was talking about.
Right.
Where things just look terrible. I mean, Will, you mentioned video gamey graphics. We're talking like PS1 cutscenes here, like that bad. And yeah, I could talk about that for 30 minutes, but it just galls me. Like a movie that was made for 220 million or whatever its budget is, like to look like that is just insane. Ezra Miller, I think they did a good job of creating two distinct Barry Allens here. Some of that, of course, is thanks to the writers because they wrote alternate Barry that way. But I think a lot of it too also falls on Ezra's shoulders, and I think that they did well in trying to make distinct versions, so we never really have to question who we're following, which one it is. That said, their performance of Alt Barry is just so grating. It just can't with that version of Barry sometimes. That version will laugh a certain way, and I just want to become Darkseid and reach out and choke the life out of him. But all of that said, again, the dichotomy I think worked well. It's in the trailer, so I don't think this is a spoiler. We have Michael Keaton Batman and we have Supergirl in this movie. And I think that for me, they are easily the best parts of this film. Really loved everything having to do with those two characters. I do think Supergirl got a little bit of the shaft at the end, just in terms of like her inclusion in the main beats of what was going on. But it was really great to see her show up for the screen time that we had her. Will, you mentioned the throughput line, the arc, sort of the familial center, right, of this film. And that did resonate with me, especially as someone who has lost a parent. Like, I feel that deeply. That did connect with some of my emotions. I did cry at a certain part of this movie, which left me really confused because I was disliking so much of the rest of the movie. And I'm like, wait, how is this possible? That's making me cry, but it did. So ultimately, I came out directly in the middle of the road on this one at a 3 out of 5. I was originally... Well, I guess that's a little over middle of the road. I was originally at a 2.5, but I moved it up to a 3 after the second viewing. When I got past, I think, some of the like irritation I had at some of the bad CGI and grating Ezra Miller antics. I do want to call out a comment though from Josh in the chat. We won't get too deeply into this, but Josh says some of the sex-related jokes Barry made were so cringe considering Ezra's antics out in the world. And Josh, I feel that deeply. I think if you're really familiar with what was going on with Ezra, and it sounds like things are maybe on the upswing for them now, but like yeah, that really pulled me out of the movie a few times the first time I saw it. The second time I was more immersed and like, okay, this is Barry Allen and not Ezra Miller. But I
Right.
definitely, I identify and understand that being a big, dark mark on this film for a lot of people. And, let's be honest, this movie came far short of its projected earnings for this weekend. It's being called the biggest DC bomb since Black Adam, and we know how well Black Adam went.
Oh no.
So, I mean, are you fellas surprised that this movie is doing so terribly at the box office?
No, I'm not surprised, but I can't in any kind of conscience relate this to Black Adam. I thought this was a far superior film to Black Adam, in my mind, anyway. I think it did so many things. Yeah, there's some things we're going to get into. We're going to talk about this film that didn't work for us, or cringy, or whatever. But there are at least a few things that did work about this film, at least for me. That, like, Black Adam was totally forgettable. Like, this one is probably going to stay with me a little bit longer. Brad, you mentioned the emotional beats toward the end. They did work for me. I liked the way that was done, the way that was carried out in these universes, let's say. And I'm not I don't, multiverses kind of bug the shit out of me, but this one wasn't so bad. I mean, it did work for me. Will, you said the ending didn't work for you, but I don't know if it was that beat or something else that you're specifically talking about. But I thought the stuff with Barry and his family, I'll just say, toward the end, worked quite well for me.
That stuff was fine. There's just stuff with some other supporting characters that fell very flat. The comparison to Black Adam is interesting because these are both sort of end of the line DCU films before the Gunn era sort of officially kicks in. So we're sort of seeing sort of what the end of the Snyderverse foundation looks like. And I've had problems with that foundation as a whole. And I think that foundation has created a lot of issues that have rippled through a lot of these other films. Not to say that the problems with this film are directly related to some of those things, but when you're playing in somebody else's sandbox with someone else's tools and with someone else's toys, those toys sometimes already have dents and scratches on them, right? And I think that's some of what happened here. There's also a couple unfortunate things. Look, I think, one, people realize that this is coming at the end of a there's no like, oh, what's going to come next out of this, because people already know that what's coming next is something that's probably not super connected to this. There is all of the pushback and kind of weirdness that happened with Ezra Miller and the news, and that sort of made people squeamish and unsure about things. There is the timing of this film's release. Unfortunately, this film released after Across the Spider-Verse absolutely, just cleaned up. And it's super unfortunate to do a multiverse film 3 weeks after a substantially better multiverse film comes out, and have people still be excited about it. So when you put all of those things in the stew together, I totally get the budget or the box office of it, but ultimately, whether they make 200 million, 500 million, 100 billion, I'm not seeing a cent of it, right? So what really is most interesting to me is how this film made me feel. And it made me feel as though all of the extra junk that got kind of added on and crammed to the edges of this film hurt what was otherwise a very, very, very good set of character beats. The ending of this movie, the very specific moment that I know that, Jim, you're referring to, is good. The stuff right before is not very good. And so I've had to ride that wave of just quality kind of all the way through this film. And so I could never stay in it fully because I was always being pulled out of the film by the film. So we'll talk about all of those things. We are really tap dancing around spoilers more so than normal here because this is a film that has a lot of like, who's in it? What's happening? It's a multiverse film, and these things are designed to be Easter eggy. But ultimately, like, there are some fundamental problems with this that I think this movie could have been, in my eyes, even if it were an extra like 2.5 stars better, to give you an idea of kind of where I'm landing on this one. Even if this one was about 2.5 stars better, I think that it would still struggle at the box office because of all those additional things weighing against it.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. Xander, hey Xander, in the live chat says, I'm looking forward to the new Gunn universe. And Xander, I am too. But I think to Will's point, this movie is sort of like an intended palate cleanser / like plot driven excuse maybe to like leave the old stuff and embrace some new stuff. I don't know how it's all going to shake out, but yeah, that kind of took me out of it a little bit too, just knowing that like I don't know that we'll see this Flash show up again in anything, you know. How invested do I really want to get in this character? And I can definitely understand people maybe feeling that way and staying away.
I think there's a lot of factors, right? It was released against a Disney Pixar film, which by the way didn't do very well either. But you're splitting the audience right away, right? If you're releasing two big summer movies on the same weekend, as you said, Will, a week or two after the Spider-Verse movie, which is like you said, raking in the cash at this point. And all that other stuff you mentioned, it just had a lot of things it was working against here. People have talked about superhero fatigue. You know, and we've been through how many Marvel and DC movies now over the last several years? How many multiverse movies have we been through? And it seems like somebody flipped the switch like 3 or 4 years ago and said, we're going to start making every fucking movie with multiverses now. And I know that's not true. I know there were probably multiverse movies before this, and we'll continue to have multiverse movies. But it seems like it's really come to the forefront. Am I missing the boat on that? Like, it seems to me like it is.
Well, if you think about it, like, so first of all, multiverse as a comic book like staple, it's something that's existed for decades, right?
I imagine.
But if you think about it, a multiverse is a way to tell a story about a story, right? Because you're no longer just commenting on character A is feeling this and has to go through this obstacle to accomplish Y. What you're now telling is the story of how multiple characters over multiple timelines or dimensions have to go through things that are either parallel or perpendicular or askance to those main stories. So that only works when you have iterative stories. In other words, like a lot of different stories. And if you think about something like the Marvel movies, they had to get through like 20 something movies before they could start kind of playing in that area, because they were at the point where they could tell stories about stories. DC has less of that under their belt, but they do have Flashpoint, which is one of the more popular of the continuity changing storylines, as well as they're more famous even than Marvel for like every like, I don't know, like 20, 25 years or something like that, Brad, like just resetting their timeline entirely with another infinite crisis on infinite dimensions and timelines and worlds, whatever it happens to be, right? So once you get past all of those and you get past the fact that we've now had 87 different Spider-Man characters, so now you can tell a bunch of stories about all of these different versions of Spider-Man based off of a comic book series called Into the Spider-Verse. That really just leaves Everything Everywhere All at Once as the one sort of like non-comic book or based in it outlier to it. And as much as anything, it feels like that was sort of the Daniels doing a response to these types of stories as much as anything else. So it is interesting how all of these things collided at the same point, but there's reasons for it. It's like when Deep Impact and Armageddon came out like a couple of months across from each other, right? Like sometimes these parallel thoughts start to appear.
So I have to tell you that somebody went back in time and erased me from existence from the podcast for the last 38 seconds. Mm-hmm. But then they must have fixed it because now I'm back, but I missed everything you just said. So last I heard was Brad, 25 years, something.
Oh, yeah.
Get rid of Brad.
Yeah.
Is that what you were talking about? Okay.
I went, yeah. So basically, I look, Xander and chat, we were talking before the show, and he's created the quantum multidimensional time jigger. And so what he did was he pushed the button right as I said 25 years, because that was our code word. And we erased you just for 38 seconds, because that's all the time that we needed to pull off the perfect Multiverse Bears time heist.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, congratulations. Proof of concept. Your machine works. Well done. Guys, how do you feel about getting into spoilers?
Yeah, we got stuff to talk about. We need to get into spoilers, or this is going to be a 2-hour podcast.
Yeah, let's actually talk about this movie instead of talking around it.
Okay, listen, spoilers are fair game. Normally I give this whole long spiel, song and dance. I'm still going to give you time to step away, hit pause, do whatever you got to do, depending on how you're listening to the show, how you're consuming it right now. But spoilers, totes, happening now. Where do you fellas want to start?
I kind of want to start with, I noticed there were a lot of similarities between this movie. Similarities in terms of the concepts related to a multiverse that were talked about in this movie, right? There were, I forget what they were called in this movie. Brad, you saw it twice, so you probably remember. But there are certain points, like in the multiverse, in the structure of the multiverse, that like can't be fucked with, right? Or else you blow things apart, right? In the structure.
Fulcrums.
There were significant something in this movie. Significant. I forget what
Bruce,
they were called.
Michael Keaton, Bruce Wayne called them fulcrums and intersections.
Did he? I thought it was a 2-word thing. Significant in something. Anyway, but then in the Spider-Verse movie, they were called canon points or something. You can't fuck with the canon, and there are certain things that are canon that can't. But it's the same exact thing, the way they talked about it in the movie. I mean, they didn't show a diagram in this. Well, they showed spaghetti in this movie to indicate the same thing that the Spider-Verse did with a CGI soccer ball, basically.
So I think the biggest difference is how they're going to use these two thematically, right? Going off of the assumption that there's not going to be a Flashpoint Part 2, or that this was the story, right? Going off of the fact, that they're not going to make another one of these. Who knows? Maybe they will, but it doesn't sound like it. In this case, they used those points of finality, those fulcrum points, to really say that there's some things that you can't change. And the emotional core of that is sort of like if we as human beings look back at like the pivotal moments in our own timelines, no matter what, we can't really worry about what we could have changed or should have changed. We have to move forward. That's the emotional core of their explanation of it. Spider-Man's was different because theirs is like all of the characters have created this idea of the canon, the things that you can't change. But the thing is that you can change them. They're afraid of consequences to them. So we have a whole extra movie coming up where I think, putting on my prognosticator hat, like the whole thing is going to be about the whole idea of canon being kind of bullshit when you have like a character who's literally forging their own destiny forward. So what I like about this is when you look at these two movies right next to each other, those similarities exist, but I think they're actually going to be a fulcrum point themselves on how we view canon points, whether or not they are truly fixed or whether they are something that we can carve our own. And more importantly, how that fits with the thematic needs of both of those individual stories.
Well, that's the thing, right? So at this point, and I know I'm kind of jumping to the end a little bit, but like Beary broke the universes, actually. He undid what he did, except for like putting the cans up on the top shelf so his dad had to look up and get caught on camera so his dad would get out of jail. But it caused little issues to happen, I guess. And now George Clooney is Batman instead of Ben Affleck. So I came in with the expectation that what Beary did was going to like blow everything wide open so that like we could just recast and reset everything, right, for the new universe. There you go, Josh. Inevitable intersections. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate that.
That's what they call it.
So
Thanks, Josh.
So how's it going to work now? Like is like, are all these movies just being wiped away and forgotten without like a plot setup for everything changing? because I thought this movie was going to kind of be a little bit of a bridge, and I'm really confused.
I would have liked it if they had done a little bit more of a like let the let this be an actual like, let's go back to that comic book term, like Crisis on Infinite Earths kind of thing, right? Like when they do it in the DC comics, regardless of what the reasons are, and it's always just like overly convoluted like comic book nonsense, right? And I say that lovingly as someone who loves convoluted comic book nonsense, right? But when they do these resets, it's then their opportunity to just say, okay, it's a reboot of the whole world because all this crazy dimensional stuff happened. So yeah, you could have done that here. I also wonder though if then you run the risk of how much of that is the needs of the ongoing story versus how much of that is the needs of this individual Barry Allen story, right? Like, I really enjoyed the fact that this character sort of went through the butterfly effect thing where the first few changes that Barry makes are mistakes, and by making those things get worse, and by continuously trying to change things get worse and worse and worse and worse, and so he realizes that he has to come to grips with his loss and embody that and encompass that and move forward. I thought that was really good, and I'm glad they did that. What I didn't like was, and I mentioned this before, the moments before we have they dust off the Michael Keaton, like 1989 Batman to show up. And we also get a version of Supergirl from kind of this world's alternate universe. And these characters get just absolutely killed multiple times, like just absolutely wrecked. And they keep trying to change things. And then all of a sudden
it gets worse and
reverse
worse and worse.
Flash or whatever we want to call it,
Zoom,
Zoom, whatever we want to call that particular character here. I didn't look in the IMDb to see if they named it or not, but I feel like that was resolved way too quickly. That was my problem when I said that. That was resolved really quickly. The villain's motivations, as well as at that point, then Batman and Supergirl just kind of fuck off out of the story. And so if this is going to be our chance to revisit the Michael Keaton Batman, like out of nostalgia, I would have liked a better send off than just like him getting his KD ratio getting absolutely screwed.
Yeah, I mean it was cool for me to see, and yeah, maybe it was clumsy, and some of those cameos or callbacks felt a little Easter eggy to me. But the movie was trying to make the point that Barry was hard headed, right? He was thinking that he could fix it, right? I can fix this. And he kept thinking that, like, I can fix it. I just need to go back and do this. I just need to go do this. And every time he did it, he fucked up another branch right on the tree or whatever. And it got worse and worse and worse until he realized that no, he has to stop what he's doing, go back to what he fucked up and make it right, or at least make it mostly right. I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that the way they portrayed that was good. But like you said, Will, it was a little clumsy. They had to stuff a lot in there. And I'm sure a lot of people were disappointed. Like, okay, we got this Superman, and we got this Christopher Reeve Superman, and then we got Adam West Batman, I think, for a second. Because I was leaning over to Brad at one point. I'm like, if they're gonna do all this bullshit, if they don't fucking stick Adam West in there, I'm fucking running out. That's it.
And then like 2 seconds later, there's Adam West.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to go back and talk about some of the stuff we didn't like at the beginning. And we talked about CGI and all that. I can actually pinpoint the moment in this movie where the movie got better for me, a lot better, or started to get better. And that was at Stately Wayne Manor, right? Like right when, the Barrys go into Stately Wayne Manor is, to me, when the movie, usually in these films, we say like, oh man, that would have been a great film until the plot got in the way. Well, guess what? This one was the opposite of that. This was, the plot actually made the movie better, because it focused on that and gave you a framework. The stuff that happened before that, man, that opening scene, I'm sorry, saving the babies at the hospital was
Ugh.
where I wanted to walk out. Like this is silly bullshit. You know, they're making it so cartoony that I'm just what am I supposed to get out of
Okay.
that scene? You know.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Earlier, I mentioned that there was stuff happening at the beginning where I didn't believe the director's comments about the CGI being so terrible being a creative choice. The babies in that scene look awful. They're so bad, especially the baby in the microwave. Now, our friend Kevin, who lives with us, made a good point, and he said maybe they can't show real children in peril like that, so they had to make them look a little cartoony. I don't know if that's true or not. Would putting a real baby in a microwave while it's like falling have affected something? I don't know. But like they were so rubbery and so cheesy. Like they should have just used fucking baby dolls and just called it a day. You know, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't know. I feel like that's one of those things where we're sort of looking for excuse like reasons to justify the look of it when ultimately the end result is it looked bad, right? You know, for
Yeah.
whatever reason it looked bad.
It took me out of the film.
And
Yeah.
in this case here, you know, if your issue is like we need to make the babies not look real because we're going to put them in the microwave, that's easy. Don't put the baby in the microwave. Like change that part. Let me tell you, there was one spot that was minorly spoiled for me before seeing this movie, and that was someone posted a GIF literally of just, hey, what's going on in this movie? And it's just the Flash closing a microwave on a baby out of context of everything else. Which, by the way, is wild to think about out of context and then try to figure out how that goes. That scene looked awful. And I'm sure there's some great animators that worked on it. When you say that something doesn't look good, it's not the problem with any one individual person or individual studio. It's a lot of different things, time, resources, whatever goes into them. But I didn't like the way that looked. I also didn't like. There's a spot of him running down a street right around that. I believe it's like either right before or right after that, but he's doing his like super fast run, but it zooms up and out, and
Yes.
we then see Beary's just arms are all just akimbo.
Looks like
and his
a scene from
skin looks like the fucking Noid from those commercials, like just like kind of that same texture. Like it did not look good, and
Yeah.
parts look way better. Once we get to Supergirl looks amazing in this. Like the texture on her costume, like the stuff that she's doing feels very, very good and also has some good callbacks. There was a couple of things with when Batman's fighting that felt way more fluid than the old Batman used to look in the 80s, which is fine. It's a newer movie, but I would have loved if they had found a way to incorporate some of that stiffness a little bit more into the fight, because that's how I remember that Bat costume being so stiff he couldn't even turn his neck. So they played with that more. You know, I wish they played with it a little.
And it's so interesting that they didn't do that, because they make it a point to have a joke where Beary, with his like Batman costume that he you know adapted for his own use, he fucking pulls the neck out so that he can turn his head in one moment. And earlier he like turns to look at regular Beary, but like his head is like misaligned with the holes for the eyes and the mouth because it doesn't turn. So it was weird for me that they didn't really lean into the stiff, like I call it bat neck, you know, the bat neck thing. But I will say, to your point about Supergirl, her flying effects were fucking fantastic.
Yes.
Oh my God. For me, like the thing that I love most about watching, you know, a Superman or Supergirl or Krypto or Streaky the Supercat, whatever, is always the flying effects. One of my complaints with the Superman and Lois show is that they pretty much always show him like taking off at super speed. We hardly ever see him like gently like float up to the air and just levitate. But this movie, man, got it right, and boy, did it overshadow some of the bad effects with Flash.
Absolutely. And it reminds me a lot of, again, this is something where I think the movie did a good job of calling back to itself, or calling back to what came before it, because some of that like hovering and then taking off the sonic boom reminds me of the way they did the Henry Cavill
Yes.
flying effects. So it really felt like, okay, there's a cohesiveness to this. There was an Easter egg that I absolutely loved in this movie. And I think it's, if I'm going to rag on a few of these things, I'm going to call out one I enjoyed. When you're looking at all of these weird, different, like multiple dimensions and stuff like that, one of them is Nicolas Cage as Superman fighting a giant spider.
Yes.
And I love that. Do you know the backstory? The backstory to that is amazing.
I do, and I hate it all. So I'm glad you loved it. But I rolled my eyes and I audibly went, fuck.
Oh,
So
backstory for those. Kevin Smith was once a hired gun for a Superman movie that never got made, and it was supposed to be Nicolas Cage, and he was supposed to, like, the execs were like, and he needs to fight a giant spider in the third act, and he's like, what the fuck is this, and he tells that story a lot on the like his comedy tour. So I like that they called that back here, because we got to see exactly as much of it as I ever want to see. Seeing it as a like 15-second throwaway gag was perfect. That movie never needs to exist, but it reminds me of some of the weirder things, like in Spider-Verse or something like that, just knowing like, okay, those alternate versions exist and just sort of are chilling in the background. We don't have to play with them, but it's just, okay, there's one that looks like it's stop motion. Okay, that's funny,
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead, babe. No, I was just going to say, like, I think a movie like this has to please a wide audience, right? I think it has to please the nerdy comic book movie folks who know about that whole Nick Cage bullshit. And so when he comes up on screen, it gives them a little bit of a hard on. You know what I mean? But then at the beginning, it has to please kind of the general, oh, I just want to see the Flash saving falling babies. You know what I mean? Like it's gotta do both. And I think this movie was so like bipolar on how it did that. I think, we liked some stuff and we really didn't enjoy some stuff. And that's this movie's got a lot of stuff at both ends of the spectrum for me.
I just feel like if you're going to do the Nick Cage thing, actually show Nick Cage. Get Nick Cage. Don't make a stupid CGI version of him that looks terrible. Same complaint with like some of the other cameos. I mean, I audibly whooped when I realized that it was Christopher Reeve's Superman that was like floating down in the shadows. But then like the light splayed over and I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, he looks like a corpse, And then like whatever the fuck was supposed to be
you don't want to see the behind the scenes on this one.
I know, right? And then whatever the fuck was supposed to be Helen Slater like flew up next to him looking all slutty. And I'm like, girl, what the fuck? Seriously, it was ridiculous. It was so bad.
Going back to the Spider-Verse example, it's like, I think what those movies do so well is they invite you to come along for the ride for the weird shit that happens, so that by the time the weirder shit happens, you're more invested in it. I never felt that this movie really did as good a job of inviting me to that stuff. So I like that scene. I like Nick Cage Spider-Man in a vacuum, but I will agree that like this movie did not do a good job of getting us to where it felt like that or any of the other cameos felt really as earned. Like I wasn't like fist pumping when I saw Christopher Reeve or Adam West, because I was just like, I don't know. I felt like I was going through the motions by that point.
So this movie's live action. We talk about the Spider-Verse movie that it's animated, right? In a great style.
Yeah.
Or great styles, actually. I think stuff like that this movie tried to do with those cameos, like, the Christopher Reeve and the Nick Cage, I think would have worked great in an animated film. I think they would have worked fantastically because people would have recognized who it was, but they would have been tripped over how shitty that the supposedly real, live action version looked. Like Christopher Reeve looked pretty terrible. Nick Cage, you could tell it was supposed to be Nick Cage, but it didn't look exactly like, I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like an uncanny valley, I guess, there, right? Like where animation can do it and nail it and you get the idea and you're on board. But if live action tries to do it and it doesn't carry off the look convincingly, you've just fucked the whole
So Xander in the chat says Mid-Journey Nick Cage throw up emoji.
Yeah.
I love Mid-Journey, but like I don't want to see a Mid-Journey made movie, please. No.
Yeah, so it's the other thing that's interesting about this is if you're going to be in real life and you're going to then play in these different franchises, and you're not going to be able to do the things of like, animation. You can do shorthand, like, oh, behind this character it's pastels, behind this character it's Legos, behind whatever, right? With what you then need to do is play with your sets and with your color grading. So one of the things that, again, if I were rewriting this movie right now, I would have him go to at some point, like as he's going through and all these things are going, I would have him run really quickly into the like the Adam West Batman, like actual, like into that world for a second to have to do something, even if it's for like 30 seconds. Like, what is this going on?
The old Batcave.
I would make it look as like color graded and color degraded. I would make it look like that kind of mod 60s pop. I would have, like, as he zips off of screen, I would have it say like zip or something like that. I wouldn't spend a ton of time in there because that would probably, but I would have it. And the same with all of these other ones. Like, I would really let the, like the weirdness of the alternate worlds play. Instead, we've got something here that I've got a question to ask of you, like, because I just want to, you've seen it twice, Brad, so maybe you've had a little bit more time to sort of think through all of this. Is this, so when we see Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne in this, are we to believe that this is the same Batman that we watched in the 1989 movie? Or is this another alternate world that also has him as Batman?
I think this is supposed to be the 1989 Keaton verse.
So if this is the 1989 Keaton verse, are we then also supposed to believe that the 1989 Keaton verse, that some would say is some of like the best Batman movies, like some people would say that, is always destined to end in a fiery apocalypse and oops, oh well, because that's what the end of this happens, right? Like basically the intersection was basically the world destroyer is going to destroy that world, right?
So this is complicated. I believe after watching it twice that what Michael Keaton Bruce Wayne was explaining was the sort of ripple effect that happens not just forward from the point in time that Beary went back to and changed, but also ripples that go backward through time. He specifically said it, affecting both. And there's a moment in the movie where Beary says, "This is all my fault. Like, me coming here has like changed sort of the trajectory of this universe." And I think like Zod coming and Superman being killed as an infant, I think all of that happened as a result of what Beary did. So my belief, this is just mine based off of seeing it a couple times, my belief is that Beary going back and undoing what he did set that universe back on its original trajectory. Where and we don't know. I mean,
it could be literally anything after.
It could be anything, but I don't think
Mostly.
I don't think that like a Man of Steel, universe character would be in Keaton's universe without Flash going back and breaking the universe.
Okay,
through.
That helps, because I was really trying to parse through that and see how I really felt about that. So that's helpful. I also struggled a little bit with. Am I still here?
You are, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
You are.
There we go. My video screen went black. So
Xander,
Xander's doing it again. Yeah, we are. Our spaghetti is all a tangled mess today.
Barry, will you stop fucking with our multiverse here?
There was a moment that I thought was set up for really, really good emotional payoff that I didn't get from it, and that was the Flash is telling the story where so Barry's saying that, like, hey, when I first got my powers, I ran to Metropolis because I was going to try to save things, and but I just got my powers like the day before, so I was able to save one kid. I was able to save this one person, and that felt great. And even though it hurt that I couldn't also save the father. And so he's going through these complicated feelings of what it means to be a hero and make effects that change one things one way or the other. And I thought that was a really good like metaphor for kind of what he's going over there. Later on, because he's no longer there to go save the kid, we just see a cut over to just like the kid, like probably getting killed. And I don't know, there's something where I would have enjoyed seeing a little bit more payoff to that. Like I never saw in the movie the Barry Allen character realize that by doing all this to save this one thing, he's also undoing this one life that he could have saved, which takes away one of his first hero moments, which you know, maybe doesn't matter at all in the grand scheme of things to him. He's really dead set on kind of saving his mom and stuff, but at the same time, that would have been an interesting acknowledgement. I would have liked, since they set it up, I would have liked to have seen it pay off.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I think that could have been maybe a lot more emotionally resonant. One of the things that I would like to see, and I know comic book fans are going to tell me this absolutely cannot be done, but I would like to see once and for all them put to bed this fucking trope in these movies about, oh, a young superhero discovers his powers and funny things happen. Like, oh, I moved my arm and a fucking lightning bolt came out and singed my friend's hair. You know, like, I'm done with that fucking shit. It makes me want to walk out of movies because it's been done to death so many times and it's never funny for me.
Well, get ready.
Call me a curmudgeon.
Get ready.
Call me a curmudgeon because yeah. Oh, the Blue Beetle movie. The whole trailer is that.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, oh, I just saw a whole trailer of that and now this movie's doing it again.
Yeah. I mean,
all right, I'm coming down off that.
the James Gunn universe is coming and they're rebooting Superman back to when he was a kid, you know, developing his powers. They're or at least telling part of that story. You know, so yeah, good luck with that, Jim. And I mean, I will say this, you do love the Guardians movies and that was James Gunn. So maybe he'll do it in a way that, like, I don't know, plays better for you, but
I'll
you're going to see more of that. So yeah.
I don't know nothing. I know who James Gunn is, obviously. I just don't know anything about this whole, I mean, people seem to think they already know what they're going to get with, you know what I mean? With these James Gunn movies, he's going to reboot this and I don't know. I don't understand it. I'll find out, I guess, when the movies are ready to come out. But yeah, I don't.
We know what his DC sensibilities are going to be like, just because he did the second Suicide Squad movie and then the Peacemaker show. So we know a little, and then between that and Guardians, and then just.
Was that the shitty Suicide Squad?
No, he did the good one.
He did the good one.
The good one?
Okay. And I think that's what has me ultimately excited, is that he took something that I didn't like and made it one of my favorite things in this DC universe. I have not ultimately liked a lot of this DC universe, so I feel like he, as the sort of the kind of the guy in the chair, will be able to maybe help move it in a direction that I do like. I don't know if it's going to work for everyone, but I know for me personally, like, if the past is to be believed, like, I'm pretty optimistic about the future.
Yeah. All right. So listen, last question before we get into plugs, because I know we want to get to those as well. If this is the very last time we see Wonder Woman and Batfleck, are we okay with that from this DC universe? That tells me everything. Okay.
I don't know.
I'll tell you what. That's a no and a yes for me. Like, I loved the first Wonder Woman movie. I mean, a lot. It's too bad we got that 1984 one. Was that the name of it? It's too bad we got that piece of crap. Like to ruin that, because I thought the first Wonder Woman movie was great. Batfleck, I never really cared for. Just, yeah.
I don't know. It's like, I liked Batfleck by himself. He unfortunately was never really attached to a movie that I enjoyed seeing him in. So I always I do have a problem sort of like separating the two, right? But like when I squint and look at just what he did, I like what he did. I just need to give him something else to do. But yeah, it's hard. Like, I'm ready to be done with kind of the Snyderverse as it is. And if that just means drawing a line in the sand and jumping over it, I'm okay with that. Would I love to see something else with Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman? Sure. I don't know what that is. And I don't know where it works, because nowadays, between her two movies and then like every DC movie she shows up just to throw rope as we hear. She
Okay, next scene. And
yeah.
scene.
She's had 2 separate of those cameo appearances this year in DC movies, for what it's worth. So
yeah.
it's so I don't know what else you can mine from that, but who knows.
How about you, Brad?
I'm okay being done with Batfleck. I did not like the Batfleck stuff in this movie at all.
Oh man, the face looked weird.
I
don't know if that's what you were talking about, Will. Like they superimposed the lower part of his mouth.
I feel like
on a bat costume.
I feel like he was CGI. Same thing with Michael Shannon. I don't know that Michael Shannon was actually
that
in
was
this
a
movie.
dude. That was a dude in a Zod costume with a green helmet on, and they just fucking filmed Michael Shannon saying the lines, acting the lines, and superimposed it on the fucking helmet.
Yeah,
that's what it looked like to me. Yeah.
So anyway, good with Batfleck being done and over, whether it's George Clooney or somebody else. I don't fucking care at this point. But I will miss Gal Gadot Wonder Woman a little bit. I do really like her, despite the second movie being so awful. Sorry, Patty Jenkins. But I really like her as this iteration of Wonder Woman. But that said, we'll see what we get. We'll see where things go after this. We still have a couple more movies coming, right? Blue Beetle. The next Aquaman movie is coming. Is that it though for this slate? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. I don't know that I care enough, to go look. But it is what it is.
Can I say one more positive thing?
Yeah, please.
I did really dig the climactic action sequence in this film with Zod. I thought that was really well done. As one of these big battle sequences, I thought it was really good. It had some cool action. It had some emotion in there because we had Supergirl, right? Getting killed or whatever.
1,000 times, scene. Don't forget.
Several times, but I thought that it, at least for the first couple times, it like carried some weight in the scene. I thought it was really well done. I was totally on board by that point in the movie.
We had a time in a bottle scene where things slow down with the babies and the microwaves and all that at the beginning, which is not very good. But there in that fight with Zod, there's some time in a bottle moments where it's not as quite as drawn out, where they're sort of like foot to foot, kind of running around doing stuff. And that looked good and that felt interesting. So it's almost like there are parts of the movie that like used the budget better. I also saw, and not to belabor this point at all, but I was like looking in the credits, and there are like 12 or more different animation studios that did VFX on this film. And which is not uncommon. You're going to have one that they have one group that's just called Day for Night, and their only job is doing the effects of, like, instead of shooting things at like nighttime scenes in the dark and hoping you can light them up, you just shoot during the day and do some effects to make it look like night. That's what their specialty is. So it's normal to have a lot of different VFX groups in, but I'm almost wondering if, and I'd be interested in knowing this story just for myself. I'm wondering if some of the cheaper effects maybe fell under one studio over the other. I don't know.
We may not ever know, but maybe in 20 years, like the Collider, if it's still around, will like do a deep dive into how this movie was made, and we'll learn about it. And if we're still all friends and still doing the show at that point, we can revisit it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, in 20 years, I hope that we've done something, I hope we're all friends, but realistically, I imagine that, one of us is going to be in prison. One of us is going to have an eye patch and be on the lam, and the other one is going to be the president. And the story of how the three of us got there, well, that's a story for another time.
That's so funny. Let me do the Altberry laugh. Yeah.
Oh boy.
And on that note, how do you fellas feel about moving into some plugs?
Yes.
Yes, God, please.
All right. Welcome to Plugs, the part of the show where we share things that we have discovered that we love, whether it's something new, whether it's something we're revisiting, whatever it is, we want to put it on your radar just in case you missed it somehow. And we hope that maybe you'll love it just as much. And let's start with Will this week. Will, what's your plug?
Hey, I've got a plug. I'm going to be plugging a review. I'm going to give a little snippet of the review now because it's not under embargo or anything like that, but I'll have a fully written version of this up on our website soon. But the new Wes Anderson film, Asteroid City, is out this next weekend, and it's his best since Grand Budapest or before. This movie is about sort of set in the 50s, and it's sort of framed as like a radio play about this stage play about this fictional desert town where all of these people gather for kind of a 3-day like junior stargazer event. But when special events happen that cause them to be stuck there in the city, they have to interact with one another more than they were supposed to, and also come to terms with some of their different like grief and traumas. I really, really like this. I love a good like meta story within a story, you know, where like the framing device sort of tells the reason why the story is important and adds extra context and extra heart on top of it. I think this is just a great looking film. Like the color palette on this just absolutely pops. Every single one of the actors here is just playing for the fences with just some fun stuff. I really enjoyed this one. It'll be coming out in theaters this Friday. Although usually with these, there's a couple of week rollout, depending on where you live. I keep an eye out for it. It's called Asteroid City.
All right, Will.
Very good, Will.
Awesome.
Very good, Will. I know that it was coming out, and I had seen the trailer. I don't know when we'll get a chance to see it. Is it out like wide?
I know that it's coming out this Friday, or I guess it.
This
yeah.
Friday.
Well,
Okay.
let's see. I think it hit some theaters on the 16th, like New York, LA, but I think it's like expanding to other cities this coming Friday.
Gotcha.
So, but again, usually these things have a few week rollout. So if it's not playing at your theater, it might next week or the week after that.
Very cool. Very cool.
Rock on. All right. Jim, what's your... Well, actually, before we do that, I think we should have like renamed this segment a long time ago. So I'm going to propose it now. You know how like we always do this segment at the end of the show, and it's almost like you can forget to do it. And you have this moment where you like catch yourself and you're like, wait, but plugs. We should call it plugs. But
100%
But
down
plugs.
for it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I'm changing it in the show notes
Yeah.
this week. But plugs.
Well, but plugs.
Plugs.
But ... What's the word for the ... Is that a
Ellipses.
Ellipses?
word? Ellipses, yes.
All right, Jim,
Okay.
what's your butt plug?
But yeah, so I went to see a film probably about a week ago now, maybe less. Maybe it was, I don't know when it was. But sometimes my husband, Brad, gets to play Dungeons and Dragons with his Dungeons and Dragons group. And I'll generally look for something to do. I'll either stay home and stream something, or I'll maybe scan what the theaters are playing locally. And I saw this movie called The Boogeyman, and I knew it was out, and I looked at the title. I kind of maybe saw the trailer, and I'm like, it looks like a very generic like horror story. Is it a Stephen King novel or novelette? I'm not exactly sure. That's probably been done several times. But this one kind of caught my attention. And it caught my attention because it got Chris Messina in it, who I really like, and an actor called David Dastmalchian, who we had seen in a film at South by. Do you guys remember the name of that South by film? Because I don't remember it. It was a film about a late night talk show that got where weird things started to happen.
Yeah,
but
that was
a really cool. He plays like the creepy type in all these films. What was that?
Late
Brad?
Night with the Devil, I believe, was the name of that, right?
Late
right.
Night with the Devil. But that's not what I'm plugging. Although that if you see that one around, I would recommend it. This one's called The Boogeyman. And I didn't expect much going into this movie, but it really surprised me how good this movie was. A really solid horror entry, I think, amongst all the tentpole films that are out right now. You know, the Elementals and the Disney Pixar and the Spider Verses and multiverses and superhero comics. We have this little like horror movie that I think is great for a Saturday night or Friday night watch. Um, what really got me was like there were some legitimately good scares in this movie and a sense of creepiness and a really good creature effect in this film. I'm not going to give anything away. It's a straight ahead boogeyman story, but I thought all the acting was great. The main creature effects were done really well as there's some like legitimate scares. And I'm sitting in the theater, you know, not I mean there were other people in the theater, but I was sitting by myself and I was pretty creeped out by some stuff. It's called The Boogeyman. It's not on streaming yet. It's still in theaters. If you want to change of pace and you like horror, I would recommend this one.
All right, awesome.
Rad.
I feel like we say this a lot, but it's always true. Horror does not get enough love in general. So anytime we can
Right.
spotlight something that is good horror on the show, that's a win. So Jim,
Yes,
thank you for doing
absolutely.
Yes, yes, yes.
that. All right, I guess I will close things out with my butt plug. And that is, it is a show from the 90s that I've been rewatching lately. It's no secret if you've been listening to the show at some point over the last 11 years, that, you know, like how movies like drop in like 1,000 member berries to make people feel nostalgic and warm and gooey inside. I'm the person that those things work on. I love nostalgia. So firing up some 90s nostalgia for me lately has been something that I have been getting a lot out of. I've been enjoying a certain show quite a bit, although I feel a little conflicted about it now, given one of the lead actors' politics. I'm trying to divorce that, you know, from the character that I'm seeing on screen. It's difficult, but I'm making the effort. This show is probably my second favorite incarnation of Superman ever, under the Christopher Reeve Superman. This, of course, being, I know it hurts to say it, but Dean Cain's Superman from Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. Again, trying to divorce myself of his conservative politics. I started watching the show again at the beginning of season 1. I probably hadn't watched it in 10 years. And I don't know. It just makes me feel so good inside. It takes me back to a time, you know, before the world was as terrible as it is and before politics were as awful as they are. And just these wholesome, hopeful stories. Yes, it's got weird comedy that I don't laugh at. I will just tell you right now, the jokes don't work on me. But I love the dynamic between Clark and Lois. I think Terry Hatcher played her pretty well. She got pretty whiny as the series went on and kind of turned me off a little bit in later seasons. But this show is just pure nostalgia joy for me. I feel bad for Jim because he will come downstairs sometimes while I'm watching the show, and I can tell in his voice that he's just like, what the fuck am I watching right now? But it's been amazing. The show is available. The complete series, I think, was on sale for like $19.99 on the iTunes store a couple weeks ago when I picked it up. And I mean, $20 for 5 seasons of a show that made me feel really good inside. That's too good of a deal to pass up.
That's one of the I mean, that's one of the complicated things about like any media from the past is like, you know, navigating kind of how you feel about one part of it versus the other parts of that. And it's fair to feel conflicted. It's also fair to still enjoy the thing that you enjoyed before. You know, so everyone has to navigate that differently. But that deal like sounds amazing in terms of like how much you get for that cost. Especially if it's something that you're planning on revisiting, not just now, but, you know, probably again in a few years when you're ready for those, you know, those warm fuzzies and member berries again. Right. So, hell of a good deal.
Indeed.
Yeah. I mean, Look, I'm used to it now by now, babe. I mean, how many rewatches of Smallville have I kind of,
Uh,
shepherded you through?
every time that comes on, I'm sure Jim is like, somebody save me.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody save me! I'm leaving right now with my sandwich.
The context there being Jim will come downstairs to make himself a sandwich, and I'm watching something really dumb, and
He just
it's okay.
nopes up the stairs.
No. Don't call it dumb if you enjoy it. I don't dig that self-depreciation.
All right. Last comment of the show, Xander, is yours. Xander says, Brad, glad your butt plug makes you feel good inside. I think that's one of the top 10 comments ever on the Movie Bears podcast, Xander. So congratulations. I forgive you for your time traveling, person erasing antics this episode.
Just feel free to give us a review on iTunes, but you can use other sound bites, whatever other sound bites you want.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, listen, it's been a super fun show as always. I said super because we were talking about a superhero movie. Really enjoyed the conversation with you, Jim, and you, Will, and Xander, and great having folks jump on with us live. I know most people, 99.7324% of people actually listen to the audio show rather than watch live. You don't know what you're missing. You're literally missing an entire whole dimension of sight that could go with your sound.
A whole universe,
If you will, or a multiverse. But whatever way you choose to tune in, we appreciate you doing so. We're coming up on 11 years and 500 episodes, which little crazy, but we'll accept that. Thank you for supporting the show. If anybody wants to chat with us between now and our next episode, which we're kind of still in the process of figuring out what we're going to do, stay tuned on that. But let's let folks know how they can connect. Jim, where can people talk to you online?
Oh, I'm still on Twitter, believe it or not. Although I'm starting to question my my time on that social media platform. But you can find me at JJP Out West on Twitter. You can also find me at that same handle at JJP Out West on Letterboxd, where I've rated all the movies I've seen so far this year. My goal is to get through the year and have all the movies rated that I've seen and then keep going. So if you're on there and you want to see my ratings, if you think my ratings suck, send me a message. We could talk about it. This doesn't have to be a very polarized thing. We can talk our viewpoints through, right? We do it on the show. We can do it with you guys, you folks too. So find me on Letterboxd.
All right. Excellent. And Will, how about for you?
Letterboxd is a great place to look for me. I am William Lindis on there. You can also look for Fundamental if it's easier to look for a tag, but both of those will find me. I'm on Facebook. Look for William Lindis. I'm on the other social platforms as well. Don't use them near as much, but I'm still doing some stuff on TikTok and been posting a few things lately and having a good time with that. I'm at the Movie Bear. And by the way, I for some reason decided for this episode to wear my Flash hoodie. Also, I live in Texas, and it's over 100 degrees right now. And this has been the hottest I've been recording an episode to date. I'm doing all of that for you, not even listeners, but like watchers, like who are watching, just so I can show off a lightning bolt at the bottom of the screen. But I'm going to disrobe while Brad's doing his plug. So take it away, Brad.
Yes, take it off.
All right. So, and now I'm distracted watching Will take his clothes off. See what you miss when you only listen to the audio version. Hey, folks, you can chat with me on Facebook. I'm the Brad Harris that likely has Chub, Chaser, Bear, Otter, Dolphin, Wolf, whatever the fuck, etc. friends in common with you. Please just send a message so that I know who you are. You're definitely welcome to friend request me, but I just want to make sure you're not a bot. I'd love to talk movies with you. So feel free to drop me a line there or on Twitter at iBradPro, like iPad Pro, but Brad, get it? You can also find me on Letterboxd. I too have rated every single movie I've seen this year. Somewhere on Letterboxd, I saw it before, I forget where it is. It tells you how many movies you've rated in a year. I need to find that again because I'm curious how many we've all seen. Maybe we can we can figure that out and compare. But yeah, find me on Letterboxd, and please follow me on Letterboxd so that I can follow you back. I follow like 3 people, and my feed is very empty. So I'd love to fill it with reviews. I just don't know who to follow. Okay, Will, you must know where it is. Will found it. I've seen 61 so far this year.
JGP
We're halfway through the year, so that's kind of a big number for me. I'm surprised.
Jim has 90 logged.
Okay.
And this is how many are logged too. So if anyone missed any too, that number would be a little different as well. I'm at 107. So we're all at, I think that's a lot of movies that we've all watched and rated and scored and put out there for all of y'all. So, we're doing 1 a week here on this show, maybe 2 a week, but we're doing, Brad, you've already done 60 plus this year on Letterboxd. So again, if you're not following us on Letterboxd, you're only getting half the story.
All right.
That's right.
All right, folks, we're out of here for this week. We will see you all next time. Have a good one. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.